Thank you. Hello everybody, my name is Craig Bennett and I'm the founder and owner of TechViews Nope, and today I am going to get into another review. In this one I'm reviewing the Netcam 360. Now as far as this one, this is actually a very good IP camera, and I'm going to treat this as more of a security camera than more of a baby monitor or anything like that, because it's kind of overkill on a baby monitor. But for a security camera, it's actually very good. In fact, it's the best I played with within this price range. It's a $60 camera I got for free to review. And by the way, if you do want this, the person who sent it to me, they said they may be able to do a coupon or whatever. Just leave a comment below and I'm pretty sure they'll hook you up or whatever. But anyways, and that goes with most of my review videos. Just ask, and most of those I get told that they can do coupons, so feel free to do those on those too. But anyways, as far as this one, what is the difference between this and other IP cameras of its type? I will have actual footage of it later. One of the biggest things is it has a talk feature, so you can actually hook it up. Say, for example, where I'm probably going to end up hooking up this one to the front door and have the motion detector turn on, and it has its own application stuff. So if it detects something going off, it will send a push notification to your phone, being Android or iOS, and then you can look at it and just talk through the camera itself. And you can hear the person obviously, but you can talk through the camera itself and tell the person to go away. So yeah. But less interaction I got with other people, the more thumbs up I got. Now, one thing I want to tell you is, with it being an actual security camera, you would need to, if you only have this camera and maybe like 2 or 3 others, it's fine. But the more you get, the more you want to use a security camera setup, software-wise. And one of the best softwares that I've found out there, and unfortunately still the best today, is iSpy. The unfortunate part of it is the current version. Keep in mind the date of this video, and it's more iSpy side. The camera works fine. It's just the program, and other programs have a hard time pushing audio to and from these stuff. And many of the programs, security camera softwares, they are very particular on which cameras it will push audio to. So that's one big thing to keep in mind. But with iSpy, it's a free thing, so that's not a huge concern myself. And with here, you can actually have iSpy running, which is the security camera setup. And I got a full video on how to set that up. And then you can have the camera itself set up where it has a motion detector, and between certain times of the day, it will send a push notification to your phone, and given that you're on the same Wi-Fi network. And what would end up happening is you can actually just go ahead and talk through it and whatever. So not only it will record for security purposes through the software side, it would also allow you to do your stuff on your mobile phone if need be. Now, as far as this goes, one of the other big things I want to mention is it is an easy camera to set up. This, unlike other IP cameras, this one, especially with its price range, basically, if you use the application being Android or iOS application, check the App Store for Netcam 360. And what happens is it has a one-touch feature. You just tell it what Wi-Fi you got and also its password, and then you press the button. It'll make a little sound. The camera will pick up the sound, address itself. Camera will make a little bit of sound back saying that I got it, and your phone basically could see the camera. It just needs 1 or 2 extra things, and just press OK, and boom, you can see it. It's the easiest setup out of the box. So that's a huge thing. So if you're just giving this to an average person. Now, because this is very critical, unlike, say for example, if someone hacks into your computer, there's a limited amount of information. Unlike someone hacks into certain things, there's a limited amount of information. If they hack into this, they can hear, they can annoy with communicate, but they can hear and they can also see. So they can see credit card bills, whatever that's just laying around. So with this, I am really going to push on the next portion of the video on how to make sure this thing is secure, because again, as a baby monitor and stuff, this is very overkill for it. And that's one big thing to keep in mind. But as far as the overall, I just want to mention that. Also, another thing, I recorded the next portions before I tested out the iSpy stuff. And whenever I say iSpy, keep in mind the video works fine. The audio portion doesn't work, but I've tested on 8 different other softwares, and the exact same thing happens there. And the only difference between iSpy and the other ones is iSpy has a tracking feature, so you can actually tell it to track an object if it sees an object, and it will do it, and it'll put it back once it doesn't see the object anymore. So anyways, now as far as this goes, getting into the side of things, I will have a link below to this page. And basically this is the page that will give you the manuals, software, and a few other things. I'll highly advise against downloading the Android and iOS applications from here or using the QR codes to download. Just look up on Android the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store and look up Netcam 360, and you should find their software on the actual store itself, especially on Google Play. I don't have an iPhone, so I can't test the Apple App Store, but there's no reason in my mind that shouldn't be on there. So with that, this particular software, I would highly advise getting it on there. That way, if there's an update or something, you can easily do that, and you don't have to worry about security stuff on your end. Now, as far as that goes, why do I recommend that you download the mobile applications first? Is they have a ability to tell the camera what Wi-Fi network to get on, so you don't have to hook it up through any Ethernet. Since the camera itself has both a mic and speaker on it, more importantly a mic, what happens is you can use your phone, tell it, okay, what Wi-Fi network to get on, and then you can press a button. It'll make an audio noise. The camera, if it detects the audio noise, it will adjust its Wi-Fi to the Wi-Fi network and password. And if it's able to get on, then it will make its own audio noise. It won't verbally speak, but it will make its own audio noise, doorbell type of sounds. So with that, and it's very neat. It's going back and forth, and I've seen a few devices that do that, and I think you're going to start seeing more and more things like that, especially like I've seen on fridges and a few other things. But with that way you don't have to hook it up to a computer, manually adjust it, and it cuts a huge amount of time out. I got about 20 to 30 IP cameras, security cameras around the place that I'm at, and each thing you have to go through, it takes about 5 to 10 minutes, maybe more, and it cuts out all that. So it makes it a ton easier. And then if something bad happens, so for example, right now with my current security camera system where I don't have these cameras, and again, the reason why I'm thinking about switching over to this is I can use the applications and basically just hit the reset button and hold it in on the very bottom. It's actually very difficult to get to, but if you have a paperclip, you can easily do it. Then after it makes a little bit of noise, I can actually tell it to go to a given Wi-Fi network and work on that later. And that way, if something happens, I can easily deal with that as needed. And that's happened like 5 times with my current IP camera setup over the past year. I had to work on it a few times, and it's very difficult to take down the cameras, put them back up, and do all that stuff, especially if you got to get a ladder out and do all that. And especially if it's outdoor cameras. This is an outdoor, by the way. It's an indoor camera. So with that, the software on the computer, I'll say skip over it. Go ahead and look at the manuals, but skip over that. I have a Dropbox link, and just go to that. Again, I deal with a lot of security camera setups. So a lot of the IP cameras, you'll get some software to, and it's all about the same. So just go there, go to the Dropbox link, go to IP camera, and by the way, feel free to check out any of these. But go here, and if you're on Mac, then just click that. If you're on a PC, then click this and make sure you download the ActiveX. Then from here, what you want to do is go to the P2P ID Finder, and what will happen is a program like this will come up. So right now I got some stuff going on in the background, so it's going up and down, but basically what you're looking at is at the very top, well, on the left side will be the cameras, but on the very top you'll have the name, the ports, which is very important if it's a fixed or dynamic, but you're just wanting to know what it is right now, the IP itself, and this is very important, and so on and so on. So what you really need to look for is the IP itself. So for example, right here, if I wanted to get into this, and we will, I'll put in its IP address and that port, and what will happen is, as you see here, port 80 is HTTP port, and what would happen is it will take you to this. You can adjust all the values I'm going to give you in the application, and it's much easier to do it in the application. But if we're going to be using this as an actual security camera setup, I'm going to really give you massive hints on stuff. So when you're going in here, you can take a look at this stuff as itself. And let's go to this. You need to click the Internet Explorer thing. So here's the actual view of a camera. So we can see that we can tell it to go to some default. Basically, these are presets of if you want it to look at a particular area, you can tell it to from there, or we can set the preset. So that's very important. So when the thing's tracking on some certain software like iSpy, after it stops seeing something move, like it'll track it until it stops seeing whatever it is moved. So it will, you can tell it to, okay, go back to whatever preset. Then from here, you can tell it how fast you want this. And this is actually pretty useful in itself. It's best to do it right in here. And you get a little bit more options within here. So what I want to show you that's actually very important is go to the settings on the Internet Explorer side. You just need to go into settings itself, and what you're looking for is, if we go down to the wireless, in fact, let's just go down. So this is the name of the camera itself. We got the device date and time, record schedule. If you're using a security camera software, we're using multiple security cameras, you want to use an actual software. If you're using like 2 or 3, it might be fine to record directly onto the camera itself using the SD card. But if you got more than that, I'll highly advise going through software like iSpy. But from your, let's go down and user settings, that's what I was looking for. So one of the first things you want to do to make sure that your camera is not quote unquote hackable, there could be man-in-the-middle attacks and stuff like that, but what you really want to do is make sure it's not hackable. And by the way, the username and password to get into this is admin. So that's the first thing you want to change, because what's going to happen is, as a hacker, they would go and try the default username and password. And also I would change the port. I'll get into that in a second, but it's more important to change the username and password. Change it to something that you can remember. Even if, believe it or not, if you need to, this is one of the only instances, it might be another one, but it's one of the only instances where I'll say it's okay to write down the password on the bottom of the camera itself, as long as a passerby doesn't see it. So if it's in a store, if a passerby doesn't see it, then it's fine. Obviously, if it's at your house, you're probably not going to have that type of problem. If they got physical access, then you got other set of problems right there. But basically, you need to change the username and password and then press submit. So from here, I'll also advise going to the basic network settings and change the port. Now, keep in mind, once you change the password, username and password, and you got to re-enter it, it has to be the new one. And when you change the port, make sure you put the, so say for example, if I put it like port 8080, I have to have that little semicolon thing in between, and that signifies to the browser that we want to go to this particular port. And that's what you would need to put into your security camera software, is that to go to whatever port that's here. The reason why you want to switch it from port HTTP port, which is 80. Don't use 21, because that's also a very common port for hackers to try to get into. It's a FTP port. They won't be trying to get into this, but they might accidentally get into it. I would use an odd port, something very odd like 8080 or pick your own, but it, like say for example 200, whatever. Because the fact of the matter is they will try to get into it, and if they don't have the right port, then they can't do that. So it's a huge step in its own self. Remember to press submit. Also, if you're going to be using it as a actual security camera setup with the software, you need to take out the obtain DHCP and make everything static, because you want the software to be able to see the camera. It doesn't need the software. Most of them can't hunt for the IP address for the camera, but you want it to be static. And you can tell, I'm not going to get into the router side of things, but you can tell the router to assign this MAC address to this IP address, so it will move any address that's using that IP. So for example, if I want it to be port 28 or IP address 28 forever on, I can tell the router on the router. Again, I'm not going to get into how to do this. I'm saying it's possible, is saying, hey, whenever you see this MAC address, give it IP address 28. And what it would do is, if it doesn't see it, it might assign something else to port to IP address 28. It might not, but if it does, then it'll just move the device seamlessly to another IP address and give this one its deserved IP address. This is the reason why you don't want to have competing IP addresses. So make sure that nothing else is scheduled to use that particular IP address. And what I do is I use high IP addresses, so like 200, something around that, because the fact of the matter is Wi-Fi routers, and this is one thing to note, is if you want to use this as a security camera system, is a Wi-Fi router, once you have about, and we're talking about a high-end one, about 20 or so devices connected to it, you'll start seeing major lag across the board, and the more devices you connect to it, the more lag there is. You can hook up, you can pretty much hook up 55, I think it's 254 devices to the thing, But the fact of the matter is your Wi-Fi router won't be able to withstand that. So over the wireless system, if it's plugged in through the actual Ethernet, that's totally different. Disregard what I said. But if you're going through the Wi-Fi system, which this is a wireless camera, so you probably would be, keep in mind that the more devices you have on the system on that given time, the slower it is. And then the Wi-Fi system has to slow down to the slowest device, which is probably the IP camera itself, which is very common. So you want to keep that one in mind if you want to use it as a security camera system. I get into a lot of these things into my I Spy stuff, but I want to really reiterate it here because what I find is a lot of people, especially up to a given age, a lot of kids will give their grandparents or parents these IP cameras, hook it up very simple like, and say, here, your house is secure, so if someone breaks in, we can at least get them on camera and give that cops, which is a great thing. You're not going to stop them, but you can at least maybe get your stuff back or at least put the person in jail. So with that, you need to make sure that some Joe Blow ain't able to hack into it, and that's very important. And that's one thing that you're probably going to have to concern yourself with more and more. Now, I would advise you go through the rest of these if you can. But one thing I would also tell you is there at the very front there is an LED, green LED, and most IP cameras will have this. In fact, I think I've seen almost all indoor IP cameras would have something like this, of this type, would have this. And to turn that off, all you have to do is do that close, and that way it won't blink. It won't even light up. It would that light up is to say to everybody, hey, I'm an active camera, don't do anything stupid. But I got a camera in like my kitchen and a few other places where you spend a lot of time in, and that's distracting us all out. So I just have it off, and it will do its thing. It will still record and do whatever it needs to do, but the light won't be flashing all the time, and that's worthwhile to note. Now, if flashing doesn't mean it's recording or anything, it just means it's live. So you have to be in the actual camera or have the right settings into it, or whatever it may be to make it record. But it just says that this is live and potentially someone can see what you're doing, or potentially it's being recorded. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Again, I just have a lot of mine off because it's just annoying. But in shops, I'll recommend keeping it on. That way, if someone says I might rob this place, they'll take a look and see that something's recording and say, okay, I'm not going to do that because that. So yeah, that's pretty important. One last thing before we head off into talking about the mobile software, and the reason why I'm getting into the security camera portion of it first is because, again, I think most people will be wanting to get this for that particular reason. But if you're going to be using it as an actual security camera system, if you're going to record on the camera itself by SD card, that's one thing. Go through these settings and do whatever. But if you're going to be using a software system, so like using an extra computer or server or whatever, have it send the videos to Dropbox or some other cloud service as soon as possible. That way, if someone steals the actual computer or whatever, which is a high chance, you still got the video, or at least portions of the videos, and that way you can get a high chance of still catching the person. Because okay, you got cameras up, well, they stole the equipment that was recorded on. It's no good. You know, they might as well have just dummy cameras up there, which is a bunch cheaper than this, which is like $2-3, because it doesn't have any internal stuff. It's just the looks. So with that, that's a huge thing to keep in mind. That's a huge thing to keep in mind. Now let's go into the alert settings into this real quick. And with all these cameras, you can have mail settings in FTP. FTP, you'll see that if you want like to have a weather camera for weather underground, that's what you use. But here with the alert, so we can say the motion detection, we can have a high, medium, low, and if you're using a software-based system, disable all this and have it trigger through the software system if possible. You probably have this as redundancy. It's up to you. But for motion detection, I wouldn't have motion detection on it and that. Audio, maybe. And then what do you want to do? So say, for example, we have that. What do you want it to do? Well, you say go to the certain presets, whatever. And also, do you want it sent by mail, upload an image? And what it means by an alarm is it'll send a message, a push message to your phone or devices over the Wi-Fi system, and then start recording. It's pretty simple like that. And you can do a record schedule. So say, for example, you want to record certain times and whatever. Again, if you're using a software system like iSpy, again, I have videos on how to set that up and whatnot. And there is problems using free software, but for the most part, it's better than none. Paid software, I'll advise that you take a seriously look at that stuff, especially if you can get this stuff professionally set up. But for the most part, I would advise having a lot of these settings done on the software side again. Again, with the network, the password and username, those are the things you need to change as soon as you get this. So, as far as that goes, so for the rest of this, I'm see if I can get video for my phone, but if that works, I'll take pictures through screenshots. But basically, what you'll have is you can have the camera itself, if it's set up and everything properly, then you can go to the settings. So a lot of these settings you can do through the application itself, which again, if you're just setting up this and that's it, like a baby monitor or whatever, I highly advise just going through the mobile device itself. But this is overkill for a baby device. So what you need to do is go through the settings itself. You can change the username and password through the user settings. I'll advise if you have an FTP server, then use that if possible. Do the alarm settings, and you can get much more in detail. So you can say that you want the motion detector to be even a number level, so between 1 and 10. And then you can say alarm outputs, low and high, PIR input, ARM, and then audio, and it gets into that. Then below that, you can do a few other things. Big thing to note this is you can do the mail notifications and a few other things around that. Now, one thing I want to point out with this is you can use DNS settings. So if you wanted to set up the DNS stuff, which is your IP address for your home system, is going to change unless if you paid for a static IP, which you really shouldn't unless you're a business. But even then, it's really not advisable. You can use some type of DNS system, and what the DNS system will do is your camera or your computer or whatever it may be, it would be logged in to the DNS servers. You would try to get into the DNS server. So for example, I could put techreviewsnetwork.com/blah blah 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 port blah blah blah, and there you go. Obviously, each DNS server has its own thing, so it might give you an exact IP address to do, and you just put in your port. So with here, if I did a port 8080 on it, then what I can do is the IP address port 8080, and if I got the Wi-Fi router system hooked up right, then it would do that. If I got it through the camera itself, then that'll be perfectly fine itself. But that's a big thing to keep in mind, is this allows you to get into your camera remotely. So that's one thing I would advise you to do, especially if you're going to be using it as a security camera system, especially if you are going to be using it as a baby monitor or something. Not as a baby monitor that you're in the next room, but maybe you left your kid at home and they're old enough to be at home, but it's just on the verge, and you're just trying to make sure that everything's all right. Or you can get it to, if you want to really do an advanced system, you can get the system to actually send you an email of when the kid gets home. So it'll take a picture of whoever goes through your door. And if you got it set up in the right angle and stuff, when someone just goes through a door, it'll take a picture of them, and there you go. So you can know when your kid got home and whatever. If you got kids, which I don't. But as far as some of the other things on here that I would note is you can change the name of the camera, the time settings, which I highly advise, because if you're dealing with cops and stuff, so someone steals your stuff, you really need to tell the camera what time zone you're in and give it an actual, say, this is the right time. Because, okay, say the thing says the stuff was stolen, I don't know, 3 hours ago, and it really was stolen 30 minutes ago. Well, the cops probably could still catch the guys if it was 30 minutes ago by looking around the area. So, yeah, that's pretty important. And there's a few other things, but overall, the application where it really shines is you can go to the camera itself, and if you wanted to, you can do a pan, you can do a reverse of the mirror image, either up, down, or whatever. But basically, you can control a lot of the things in here, including the IR. Now, with this, one thing I'll tell you is the camera system on the phone itself is much more difficult to use, and that's one thing I don't really like. But still, it's something worthwhile to note. And you can actually see multiple camera systems on the phone itself. So that's one thing to note. If you got multiple systems, you can only see up to a certain amount. Keep in mind, it's a phone or a tablet, not like a computer. And like even mine, where I got a lot of cameras, you can't see everything in one screen, and it's pretty important to note that. Now, with that, what is the pros and cons to this? A huge pro is the quality of image is great. It is actually one of the best cameras that I've played with. Now, with this in mind, I'm not buying a $300 camera in itself. This is the only mic and speaker camera I've played with. And that's one thing to note also. But the price range for this is extremely low, and this would be the actual price range that I'll be looking in for cameras anyways. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The normal price range that I would say something like this would be in is double easily. So instead of 60, it'll be easily 120. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, with this, I will also tell you that you may have to look in certain other places. So right now, looking at this particular camera, and I'll send a message out to the the people who's selling it who had me review this. And by the way, I got this for free to review, but obviously I'm keeping everything in mind. I'll send out email to them asking them if when they're supposed to get more in stock, but you may have to look around for this particular model at worst case. So that's one thing to note. But overall, this is one of the better ones that I will mention. Now, some cons to it. Again, the big thing is it doesn't have tracking on board. So the thing will send you a message, either a push notification to the phone if you've gotten a audio alarm or a motion alarm or something like that, if you allow it to do it. And it's through the application itself, by the way. But if you want it to track someone, so say for example, if it detects something in my garage, I want it to track someone, but unfortunately I can't have it do that because it doesn't have that ability. So I have to use third-party software to force it. And third-party software is what tells it to move around and track it. Now, as far as that goes, that's pretty much everything I cover on this. If you've got any questions or anything, leave that down below. Links will be down below also. Leave a like, subscribe, and share. And please feel free to check out my other videos and also the Patreon campaign to help these videos keep coming out. Anyways, hope you have a great day.